Thomas Lane.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about Beam Agile Data Warehouse Design. I picked this meeting up on last week. Wednesday? Tuesday, maybe, yeah. Yeah, and said I'd do something, and so this is what I decided to do. It's something we do here at Pelamont now is more of a Beam approach to data warehousing design. So, what's that? Yeah, you'll find that out. I don't want to give it away. It's like an answer. So, it's part of my Beam here. No, yeah, it is, and it's a methodology and not a technology. Much like Data Vault's a methodology and not a technology. So it's the same thing here. So.
Can I move your green bottle? It's like
no, that's perfect. That's perfect.
You shaved for this event.
No, I had my hair cut. So.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. All right. So this is me. So instead of just discussing who I am, now it's a picture of me from many years ago where I look young. So it's great. Great picture on St. Lucia. So anyone know where St. Lucia is? I've never been there. It's one of my favorite islands of all islands anywhere. So they have a beer called Piton. They have 2 peaks that are called the Pitons, and it's a Piton beer. So the only time I drink is when I'm on island. So my background is I've been in IT since like 90. I taught at Marquette's Continuing Ed, teaching VB, teaching access programming, which is an oxymoron, and database design and stuff like that for the Continuing Ed and their web certificate program. And then what I was doing there was actually I was working on my postdoc and doing my doctoral work in chemistry at the time. Didn't think that IT would become my career, but it ended up my career. And so I've been working with SQL since 6.5 and up. So it's been a while. The wonderful years of the really bad engine and 6.5 to about 2000 when it sucked. Anything you did would slow it down, no matter what you did. So, and everyone had solutions, and they never worked. So it was great. What we're going to look at is basically this book, essentially. We're probably grabbing most of the images and stuff like that, so I'm not hiding that. Just so you know, I'm not plagiarizing because I am claiming this is where I get some of my stuff from because I didn't have a lot of time to write them up myself. But the book does a really good job of doing this. But if you're interested in doing this type of modeling, I would recommend you get the templates. The templates are great. They're not in the best of format. They're in Excel, and then some of them are in PDF, and then you have to get them into Word and stuff like that to really work with them. And they format kind of funky. But they're a nice place if you were actually going to write in them. They're great. If you're going to use them on the computer, they're a terrible place. But actually writing in them for at least the canvas is really nice. But when you get to the Model Stormer, a little funky interface, but it works okay. It's an Excel spreadsheet. The worst one is the event matrix that has things off at an angle. And every time you type in there, it looks funky and it never really lines up perfectly. So just understand they're there, and they kind of follow this methodology pretty well, and they help you kind of lay out what you're asking. So the idea is it stands for, here's the answer right here, right on the bottom. So a business event analysis and modeling. And the important thing here is that little asterisk at the end, and those actually are the 7 W's that are used almost essentially for getting all your requirements for your data warehouse or your data mart. Okay, so you ask those 7 questions, and that's how you get at the answers. And then you keep asking those 7 questions throughout the whole process. You keep re-asking them. You try to drill down and get more information. Like you'll do that for determining your event, which will determine your data data model essentially that you're working on, and then you will do that for your dimensions as well. So you start asking questions pertaining to getting the noun information and about getting the verb information, right? So if anyone knows anything about data warehousing, it's verbs and nouns, right? The verbs are your facts, the nouns are your dimensions, right? So they give you all the context about the event that you're modeling. Okay? 14. So we'll get some vocabulary, we'll go through the BEAM process, and we'll look at some BEAM templates. So that's basically what we're going to cover today. For some reason, clicking is not working. Okay, events. These are your verbs, okay? These are the things that determine what your data mart is about. What you want to do whenever you do data modeling is if you're new and you're new into a company and you want to start doing data warehousing, do not pick a difficult, low yield data mart to model first. Pick out a fast, high yield data mart to work with first. Okay, so if you're going to take an event you know you're going to get a win with. The last thing you want to do in data warehousing is give a failure at the beginning. Failure at the beginning normally means a failure at the end. So pick something you know you can do and you can do quickly and give results. So the idea behind this is agile, make it fast, make it iterative, change your model, update your model quickly. And so if you can pick a big win right away, one you can do well, that's more preferred over one that's difficult. But of course, if the company says you have to do this one data mart, you have to do it, right?
Have you ever run into a company that didn't say do sales first?
Yeah, actually, one. And
I'm like, you get to
yeah,
choose?
yeah. It was a budget one first.
If it's not sales, it's
It's something the finance wants eventually, right? So, or your salespeople want, right? So, finance wanted to come out as a spreadsheet eventually at the end. I don't know why, and the salespeople. No, you know why? Because that's all they work with. Right? How do I get this out of Tableau into a spreadsheet? Okay. Yeah. Let's see. BEAM. We need to know what that stands for. Again, it's important that you add the asterisk because it kind of gives you those. It looks like a star as well, which is really important. Okay. There's the model canvas, which we're going to address in this, and basically is just a place to put the answers to the 7 W's. I know, but you move it over a little bit and you have a W in there.
okay.
It's kind of how they used to tell you about reporting is. There's the 5 W's you're supposed to do in reporting, and one of it is how again. Yeah, you always add the W.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where, why?
Yeah, and how. Here we have the fact table. Everyone should be familiar, but I'm going to go a little bit over of data mart designing, but not in depth. Everyone should know what measures are. Those are the numbers you're actually going to calculate on. Do you put measures in facts or do you put them in dimensions? Facts, right? But in dimensions, do numbers ever show up? Yeah, they can. Don't be inhibited from that. You may have to keep like historical price, which is a number of a product. You may have to keep ranges for coverages and insurances is a common one. Another one, oh yeah, it's an insurance business, and of course they didn't care about sales, they cared about well, it's a sell, yeah, it's selling their transactions too.
And there's no, like in data warehousing, there is no rule. There are 0 rules for which there's no exceptions.
Correct.
Every rule has an exception.
Right. And if you're ever in doubt, put it in below. If you have a question about whether to put in the fact and the dimension, often it's just try both. You know, what is going to be the problem? And if it works out that you don't use one or the other, you can deprecate it if you have to and get it out. But try it in both places. If they use it dimensionally, it might be important to add a dimension. If they use it in the fact as a measure, you might have to keep it both. All right. Star schema, basically that's the anti-snowflaking approach to data warehousing. Is snowflaking bad? Yes, but is there an exception? Yes, right? There's an exception when you have to do a bridge table Often things like an office visit to a doctor, you have all these diagnosis keys, and there's 7 or 8 of them that might come off of one event at a visit for a doctor. And you may have to have a bridge table to manage that one-to-many or many-to-many relationship between the two. All right, model stormer, and that's just something I'll show you later, but it's basically that in the background over there. All right, that is the model stormer. The idea is to actually do the model stormer on a whiteboard. Not necessarily have to be that way, but it is ideal that you can kind of get people standing up, talking about the things, and get them interacting with their design. So they're kind of designing a table. We found that actually using the canvas work better is just kind of letting them talk through the problems, and then you present them with the model stormer after, and then they kind of break that down later. We just found that they engaged in questions and answers pretty easily without having to go through a whiteboard and have them standing. There's rarely a place where people can stand without a big desk and table and all anyway. So, just a quick little Gilbert. Yeah, I'm missing this one. So, yeah, it's always been right. Just a quick to go over the difference between relational database design and dimensional database modeling. Relational database is business process oriented, whereas dimensional modeling is decision based. And so you're trying to get the data out and make information, make decisions about what's going on and find out what's wrong. This is to maintain what the process is. How are we going to maintain our customers? How are we going to maintain orders? That's the relation. Okay. Relational expects no surprises. That's where you tend to break down, is when that query runs slow, is because it's expecting to just load data in and make it atomic and make it there and stable. But everyone tries to treat it as a reporting environment. And the moment you do that, you're throwing surprises at that database. It doesn't respond well. And like if you buy any off-the-shelf thing, you can't usually add indexes because there's indexes in for you to write the data in and to read out exactly what you expect in one report or two, right? And so the moment you start reporting out, you have to come up with solutions. One of the solutions is create a reporting instance, which is just to port that over somewhere else, the same format, and just run into the same problems. So now you can control the indexes or stuff like that, but that's not the best answer. So the best answer is do dimensional modeling, and which dimensional this is OLAP questions or OLTP. And then when you get to uncertainty, and that's where you run into problems with relational databases, this is why you go to dimensional, okay? These are the questions you can answer with OLAP, with online analytical processing. Okay, is that right? Did I say it right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So there's 2 terms. There's online transaction
Transaction processing,
processing, which
and
is what's behind your ERP, your CRM,
Right.
etc. Designed to take data in and very poor at giving data out and
Right.
reporting from it. Online analytical processing is designed for reporting to different databases.
Right. And to bring together a lot of different databases as well, or data sources as well. So, all right. The data warehouse design objectives is to get precise and accurate data, right? So what's the difference between precision and accuracy? Anyone know? Just a quick question. What do they call bombing? Whenever they get done with bombing, they call it what? What do they call that kind of bombing? They call it precision. Covered bombing, but they call it precision bombing, right? There's a reason why they call it precision bombing and not accurate bombing. Right? Yeah, it has to do with this. So up there is not accurate and not precise. Over here is not, down on the bottom is not accurate but precise. So precision bombing means they can hit the wrong target every single time. Right? That's really what they're saying. Is that if they miss something, they'll miss it every single time. Right? Whereas you really want accurate and precise bombing, if I was to do and talk about bombing, if that's my precision, if I really wanted to do that, but I don't. But so, Right? I just want to go on doing that. No. So why really is relational databases bad for reporting against, and why is dimensional modeling good? Well, the main reason is it's all about the joins, right? No trouble. So I don't know if you get that joke. No. I don't know who the artist is who sang that song. It's all about the bass, no trouble.
Yeah, make a trainer.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, right. So really, what you're looking at is
That's your excuse. I don't.
yeah. She's my favorite. No, just kidding. All right. So this is what you have for a relational database. So to get out an information about an order, you need all these tables, and if not more, there's usually more involved too, because you're going to get more information about shippers and more information about customers, and there's going to be things all over the place. So to get to all the information you need, you've got all these joins, and they don't work real well when you start doing all of that with a lot of data. It just doesn't work. All right, and so what you want is the star structure, right? You want what I like to outline here is the star, right? So there we go again. And this is the snowflake. And so the snowflake can come out in many different formats, right? And so, but you can get a nice little join here. Oh, that's great, right? No, we defeated the whole purpose once we have another join out here. We're going to kill our performance. We're going to have storage issues. We're going to have, if someone grabs this table and tries to join it over to this thing over here, we've got messes. So we don't want to do that. So if you can do anything in the data warehouse design is to prevent snowflaking as much as possible. Not bridge tables. Bridge tables actually handle a real specific problem and rarely are considered snowflaking. So just so you're aware. All right, one fact, one process, one fact, one event. All right, so they are the verb. They're the verb that we're going to try and figure out when we do Agile data warehouse design. They're surrounded by nouns, right? And the nouns give you context. So those are the things that people really want to know about. Oh, how old is my customer when they buy this product? Okay, where do they live? Have they moved? Those are the nouns that you're interested in. And then you also say, well, if they are that age, how much are they buying? Those kind of analysis. It's important that this is another way of looking at it. This is basically a relational diagram of a star schema. Basically, they just have one fact in here, and then we have the 4 keys that point back to the dimensions. All right, when you do Agile data warehouse design with Beam format, you want to bring everyone together, all your stakeholders involved, if possible. You don't want to have a business analyst go out and talk to one person, then go out and talk to another person, and then go out and talk to another person. There's no interaction there between all the stakeholders in that case. So the idea here is you bring everyone together into the meeting as possible. And you ask them the questions, and then they can debate, discuss, and interact with each other on what their real process is and what that real event is. The last thing you want to do in a good data warehouse design, as he pointed out earlier, I forget your name, Jeremy. Okay, so he had indicated that he has to go back and do the same thing the business analyst had done, because they went one person at a time, asked something, and it wasn't exact. So we put the business analysts, the modelers, the architects, the developers, and all the stakeholders in the business together in the room. And so everyone can hear the answers, and everyone can interact with everybody and ask the questions. Not everyone's going to know the right question to ask. So you just continue that process and regularly do it.
So like the ideal scenario for what I've always heard of Agile, which I've never seen this happen, but the ideal scenario, my understanding is that the product owner is supposed to do all that legwork,
right? And
then we just talk to the product owner.
Not in this.
Also never seen that happen.
Yeah.
Or you think that's less than ideal?
I think so. In this scenario, we want to have everyone interacting because then you can ask, everyone can ask the questions. You don't get that missing. And if you have anything to add, Daniel, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I would say, I think, especially with how we just incorporated, I don't think it's, you don't want all the stakeholders all the time. But
Right.
on the initial startup, you get them, but from there, the product owner would then take over. So I think it's kind of measuring how many times do you need to get the stakeholders together at once, and then moving to that more agile framework where the product owner becomes that sort of funnel for questions and answers.
Yeah, but we also do a lot of that also during our review as well, a sprint review. We have them together for the sprint review to show us what we've done in that 2 weeks or whatever, and then we say, is this right? And then they have a chance to say, no, that's not quite right, or yeah, you're down the right path. And maybe we want to add this, and that's a good chance to keep extending that process. But we do, yeah, you're important that the product owner drives everything after the initial couple of meetings. Yeah. We had it where there's 2 meetings. The initial meeting was to go through the canvas, and we'll show you that. And then the next one is to go through the model after that, after the canvas, and expand on that and see if there's anything we missed. And that's pretty close. And we had small data marts at that point, and we didn't have to go back too many times. But if it was a bigger process, like sales, I would say for sure, sales is going to take a lot longer, and it should be done more carefully. It's a bigger process, right? But the smaller marks, I would say some of them you can get done pretty quickly. And with the process, with everyone involved, I found that this process cleans that whole step up. You don't have to go back and get business requirements again, all right? So, I missed that one. Let me go back. That was fun. Okay, so these are the 5 W's, and basically you ask who's involved, what did they do, and what is done. Okay, and we'll ask more direct questions. When did it happen? Where did it take place? And that might be online, might be in a store, it might be in an office, it might be by clicking a button, I don't know. Whatever it happened to be, where was that? How many? Basically, what is that asking? That's asking for the measures, right? That's asking what are we going to actually measure in this case? And then why did it happen? How did it happen? And that's kind of in what manner? And sometimes it's questions like, did it happen because of this? Did it happen because of that? Like an incentive program, did it happen? And you ask those kind of questions to understand if there's any kind of additional attributes that need to be caught. But you have to be careful in some of these phases. You go too deep into the detail on that, and you get detail about things that don't pertain directly to the fact. So the initial part, W's are mainly for the facts. You have to be careful, don't go into the nouns, because that'll take you out. That'll give you detail about detail and not detail about the facts. Okay, so the W's are for the facts. All right, the 6 W's, of course, are adding the dimensional data, those 6, and then of course the how many answers the measures. So if we ask the 6 questions correctly, we should get all of our dimensions, right? And if we ask that final W correctly, we should get all the measures. Not exactly, because they're gonna not be aware of things like, oh, year to date, oh, that's right, we do that. You may have to do some iteration to get some of the measures that you don't have, but the basic ones you should start with. All right. Let's see. So this is the order you do them in, is who, what, when, where, how many, why, and how. That's generally the order you want to follow. And you try to keep yourself in that flow. But you'll find that asking the questions will take people in other directions, and you may have to just let them go. You may just let them go on for a while until they get to so much detail that you're way off base. But it's a good idea to get this, to ask the questions and get them moving. And it's amazing how much they want to talk. This is their process. This is their life, right? This is what they do every day, and they want to make it better. Right? They want to make their life just a little bit easier, and you'll find they engage. They don't say, "Oh no, don't do this." They want to do this, and the more they get involved, the more the product becomes a success, because you're going to see them building the design of the table. They're going to help you do all that. You're not going to do it. You're just going to fill in blanks for them, and it makes them feel like they're involved, and they really are. And so that's an important piece of this. All right, so this is the normal way you did data warehouse design, right? Do the analysis, do the design, do the development, do the test, release, and you're fully done, and everything works perfectly. And you started this year and you're in the next year, right? And you know that, when do they see the data? Here. They don't see the data over there. They know nothing of what's going on. They have no input. They talked to someone last year. They now are going to see the data 2 years from now.
What is the analysis step you're representing?
What's that?
What is the analysis step you're representing?
It's all the BA work for the most part. Yeah. And this is without Agile. So this would be someone who does it waterfall, right? This is how they used to do it, right? And how, if you were a data architect, what did you usually get? You got a report, and you got some analysis that said, oh, they want to do this afterwards. And you took that report and you put it into your design, and then you looked at the data and you saw if you could make that report out. And then you made your data, your star structure, you were done. You then put it into test. You could get that one report out, you were done. And all you cared about is that one report. There was no analysis. They couldn't look at the data and just graph it and play with it. They were only out to get that one report, and that was the worst design process. So what we're trying to do in Agile is just enough design up front. So just do what you can during the sprint to get something out. Okay, meet with them, determine, get sources. If you can't get right to the source, which is something I'm totally against, but if you can't get right to the source, do an extract right away. Get them to give you a report, something like that. Give them a result, model it, put it out, give them some data, let them see it. Is it going to be perfect? No, but you're going to give them a result. You're not going to give them 7 months to wait. You're going to give them something within 2 weeks. Whether that first thing might just be the design of the table, an actual table out there. Then you might go and say, oh, 2 weeks later, you've got some data in there. You're validating the data. You're saying, oh, this doesn't look right. You send it back. And then 2 weeks from now, you might actually have a functioning UAT. And it's surprising how well it works. And you don't have to have perfect data. That's the thing. Getting perfect data is something you have to get out of your head. You want this to be an iterative process to improve, and you see data goes all the way along. You want to improve the data. Part of the process is getting the data better.
So, and the way I understand you were just saying this is that the stakeholder interaction is like at the end of each sprint.
Yeah, you try to, right, and then right. We did it at the sprint review because it seemed to be the best time to do it, and then we could get more input from what we were seeing. And throughout the day, we weren't afraid to contact them. And that's the other thing. Once you have that initial contact and you have that rapport, I mean, they thought I was a modeler, so I said I don't have enough clothes to model. So.
But yeah, I think you get them in the room, like physically in the room, 2 days in the first week.
Yeah.
And like punch it all out, like figure out what's happening.
And you say we're going to give you something. You don't just say, oh, we'll come back sometime and give you something later. You actually promise them some results. You show them things. You don't just, like, they don't care about an ERD, right? They don't care, but if you can give them the model stormer, they might actually help them. You asked a question.
Yeah, can you elaborate when you said don't try to have the data be perfect? You mean don't have it be fully capable to extract from? Like,
Yeah, or, I mean, you want to have it into a star structure. You want to
it's
get it.
gonna be accurate,
Right.
accurate or
Yeah, you want it to be accurate, but you also want to have them involved in that as well. You don't want to think that they're not going to improve the data. You're going to get the data out the way you think it should be and get it to them, and they're going to
you're
look at.
speaking like as a whole, like how its functionality.
Yeah, you want to get a general functionality and not all the increment, like you can't have maybe all the attributes for all the dimensions. You might not have all the measures in there, but you have a couple and you're starting to build it and you're going to show them something. And it's, get it out of your head, it has to be perfect.
So that concept of providing users with imperfect data for user acceptance testing, I've run across users that balk at that idea.
Right.
Like they don't want to be involved in testing when when IT produces it for them, it should be right.
Right.
Why do I have to work at it? It's your job to get it right.
Right. And
So that's like
you have to make sure that they're invested in this process, and that you have to get the company to buy into this. The company we're at right now, very committed to it. I mean, they have saved millions, hundreds of millions of dollars by doing data warehousing with AI on top. I'm not kidding, hundreds of millions of dollars. So they're invested in this, and they're making sure everyone in their company is invested in this as well. And so it's not just, it's their data. It's not like we're saying, okay, we made up this data. No, you gave us this. You told us where to go to get this, is what we're saying. Is this right or not? You have to be invested in it.
I would say it's not imperfect data,
But
it's an imperfect data model. Like you've got a customer dimension, but maybe it just has the customer name in it
Right.
instead of all 50 attributes that customer.
Yeah, so that part I get, the inaccuracies.
Right.
Like if you have a group of data sources from a customer that are really confusing, like to get one dimension, you need to pull from 30 tables, and there's a lot of data quality issues in that data. Getting through a single user story or a single iteration where you can give them something that you're sure is right is like months and months.
And I think what we've tried to do is get a little bit away from throwing everything in there right away. So yes, we have an imperfect model, and that's what he's trying to say. And what I'm trying to say is that the model is imperfect, but the data is what we got. We can't deny it. We might have to know some tweaking that has to be done, and that has to be provided by them.
Right. So this agile process is you're aiming at this as the data modeling and the ETL, not data quality. So
Data quality is definitely a point of this. It's really important. I mean, in that we've done that every step. Like we come across an issue, we send it immediately to them and say, what is right? We can't improve what we can't improve without them. They have to provide it. And the company has to be, if they're not going to be invested in it, they're not going to get a result out either that they're going to be happy with. So we found that and it's amazing, they actually became willing to meet with us like I've never seen before. And I don't know, I have to say this, engaging them in the beginning has made the biggest difference.
I do wonder too, if it's a difference of opinion when you're talking about an internal IT team versus a consultant coming in. That because if a consultant's being brought in, then the company and the people, the stakeholders should be invested or know what's on the line. But asking an internal IT team to spit something out, it's just like, oh, it's every other day, like no big deal. So I do wonder if that plays into that sort of dynamic of how do you involve them.
Right. But I've been in companies where I've worked at, not as consultants, where if the directive was, and we were handling prescription data, we're PBM analysis, everyone is invested in the data. And it was important that everyone got the data right, or else we didn't make any money, right? So it was important that everyone was involved in every step. And so I just think the buy-in is the most important, and including them in, and not feeling like, oh, you just talked to me 7 months ago, I don't care. I don't don't matter. We made them an important step in the process, and they continue to be. They didn't stop. So, does that make sense? I hope that.
Sure, I think.
Yeah.
It's not easy to get that.
No, it's not. It's not. But and I'm not trying to gloss over that. But you'll find including them in the beginning,
Yeah, it helps.
it'll help a lot more. Because normally you just have somebody sitting down at your desk and saying, "How do you do this?" And they ask the right questions, and they come back to you with a piece of paper, and they said, "This is what you've got." This way, you've got interaction, and you've got some vested.
I'm definitely with you that they
Yeah. So, where am I in time? 6:45 already?
You're good.
Okay,
Fine, you're fine.
okay, good. So we get collaborative data modeling, get it right from the stakeholders. We don't get it from a piece of paper, right? We don't get it later after 5 months and the data's changed and the process changed either. We're getting it as that process is taking place. We're trying to give them that answer as that process, so the chance of things being old is less as well, okay? That's another important part. I don't know how many times I've gotten oh, these are the requirements. We wrote them 7 months ago. Here you go. And actually a system has changed since then. So that's another thing. Incremental, the stakeholders are involved. They get to see the changes. They get to see every piece along the way. They're not eliminated from it and just given an answer at the end. It's more of a, and they get to play and say, no, that's wrong. This is right. Let's do this. Some of that. And of course, iterative model design. So the model itself becomes iterative. So we add more to it. We add more value. We take away things we don't need. I don't know how many times someone's come to me and said, here's what we need, and you put in 75 measures and they turn out they only use 2, right? And you go, wow, we took a lot of work to get those measures done. So it's also important. So what Agile data avoids the analysis paralysis, which, as we talked about, you get the analysis and then you're afraid to move forward. You're stuck in this analysis and this phase where you're going to start designing. No, I'm going to fix this and then design this. No, you push it all the way through. You don't stop. You keep moving yourself. You don't let yourself say, okay, I'm done. I hit a roadblock. That's it. We move on. The other thing that and we can talk about the other things, but the no data then requirements. So what that means is we can actually talk about this process before we actually have an operational system in place. Has that ever happened to you before? No. We can actually talk about, hey, we're going to put in this ERP system in eventually, whatever. But really what we need is this process defined and this event model. And we can actually look at that model and help design the operational system as well to get the data in better and to make sure that we meet those requirements. So we're not waiting for the data to do the modeling. We can do the modeling anytime because everyone knows what the process is and the event is involved. They don't need to have the data. All right, let me talk about more. I don't want to get, and this one is important. Sorry about the stock. I didn't get the license yet for the picture, but but never underestimate the affection stockholders will have for data models they themselves create. And that, I think, is what's helped us the most right there. They were involved. They are the people that made this. All right. Just talking about different types of facts, just so you're aware. There's something called a beam code, and I'll look over that when I go to the spreadsheet. But there's beam codes that help us define things, and they're usually 2 letters, and they're pretty easily distinguishable. And it makes it easy to define what that entity, measure, dimension, that anything might be without, and you want to leave it off. So you have additional information that you normally don't get in a model. You put these kinds of things in, these codes to help you define that. And so there's of course, everyone knows a discrete, reoccurring and evolving, or a transactional fact table, a reoccurring periodic snapshot, and accumulating fact snapshot. And those, and a reoccurring snapshot, periodic snapshot, is one in which something keeps happening at a regular interval, and you keep track of that. A accumulating snapshot is one in which maybe you're looking at shipping and processing of sales, and you basically have to look at each step along the way, and you have to accumulate that data as it's taking place. All right. This is the canvas, and I think I have some duplication going on, but yeah, I do. For some reason, it duplicated. Let me go ahead. Let me go and show you my canvas.
So there's similar to the business plan.
Yeah, the business canvas as well, right?
It's the same people that do that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So kind of generally the idea. So let me show this as not web layout. Where's the one where I can get it just full view?
If you go to the view on the ribbon.
Yeah.
And then we can do, oh, wait, yeah, the page width.
Yeah. Well, I'll just leave it like this. I wanted to get it just by itself.
Oh,
Is that this web
You can
view?
double click the ribbon.
Okay, got this a little bit bigger. Okay, so basically, I've tried to de-identify a model we did. So basically, what this was an income statement process. Stores receive account totals. Okay, that's what I found out the event was. Okay, that it's just a profit and loss statement that's sent out to every store. Okay, so that's how I found it out. I had to figure that out by listening to what they said. So I asked them, who does what? When did it happen? How did it happen? Who involved? And I answered questions like, when I asked the question of when did this happen, it says at a month, year, at the month close. They talked about 5 days after some event. They then will start the process of closing that month and then send out the profit and loss statement or the income statement. They talked about they have data back to 2005. I grabbed that in here. Sometimes you'll get an answer or a question that you're not sure where it's going to go, but you just track it. Put it in someplace, and maybe it'll become important later. It may not fit in this certain area for you, but you just go ahead and put it in. They've got ledger account information. We found out that the account balances, they'd be interested in the profit and the total expenses. We found out where all corporate stores, franchise stores would be nice. Those are the things we're just gonna be interested in. Corporate IDs, it gives us some numbers that will be important to identify the data. We had some information about what it's like the chart of accounts for some of the different stores, and they're different. So we have to have different chart of accounts for each store. We needed to maintain that separately. Those are important things. So we just filled this in as we talked to them. Did they answer all the questions? That was amazing. You just kept that, they just kept talking. They wouldn't stop. So it was important that you grabbed all this, and maybe the BA was the important job was just get all these answers down.
What do you see as like the relationship between this diagram, or maybe the advantages and disadvantages comparing this to the Kimball bus matrix?
Yeah, the
You
Kimball
still use
bus.
the bus
Yeah,
matrix?
well, you still use it. It's a modified event matrix. Okay, and now I'll show you that a
There's
little
another
bit.
one that's like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on here, but what Kimball kind of doesn't do, it does better. Kimball's is great at identifying the dimensions that are common to all facts, right? It's really good at that. But it's not good at identifying whether you're using a conformed dimension, a shrunken dimension, or anything like that to define something. It's not really clear on that, right? And so what this event matrix does is kind of better defines how the dimensions interact together with each other as well. Okay, so there's a lot missing, and you didn't even think about it. You go, oh my God, yeah, you're right. It'd be nice to have that.
Do you update this throughout the project?
Yeah,
With
and we
the
did.
last
There was a
matrix?
point where we got done with it, and we're just basically entering stories, and we didn't update this anymore. But initially, this got updated regularly. The first meeting, a lot. The next meeting, we showed them this and said, is this right? And then we also showed them the model stormer. And we said, this is what we got laid out next. All right, and then the model stormer, let me get that. Let me see my mouse, where's my mouse at? It's here. And this looks a little bit confusing, but hide that. All right. So what you do, and for this one, they're talking about orders. We talked about orders, and we said a customer orders product. Okay, that's what we learned for. This is what this model. And my previous one was different, and then I want to update that one yet. But so this is a transactional fact, and that was nice. That's grabbed right there. The customer answers the who question, and it's got a surrogate key, right? So that's going to identify that as a surrogate key in my fact, right? This are some examples. And so what we tried to do to get the examples, we do ranges and max and mins and extremes of the values. We don't use real values if possible, but because then someone's going to see their name on here later, especially like a salesperson might see their name, and you don't want to do that. So try to make up values, but you try to make up values that show the range of the values that could be in that column. Okay, and then you would say, well, that was the when question, on an order date. You might have another on a promotion, okay, and you kind of vary these things. Like when might be something else. You may not fit some of the W's in there correctly, but you try to identify, and this is I forget what the GD stands for, but that's because I'm standing up here looking at it too close. Thank you. I thought that was what it was. I didn't want to say it because I'm standing in front and I will forget things. All right, and so you start putting in values, and notice that for dates, you want to go to extremes, but you also want to make sure you get the ranges that they want for the data. Is it important that they get it today? Is it important that they get it 5 minutes ago? Or is yesterday okay? And you notice that the most recent number here is yesterday. And then you want to get extremes as how long ago did they have data? Okay, so you do that as well. And you put in different formats, especially like for revenues and numbers. If you have international ones, you want to put those internationals in here too. Okay, so if you have pounds, if you have euros, you have to put that in here too. All right, and so that's how this gets filled out. And the actual canvas looks like, here's a blank one. Looks like this. And you would just enter in here orders. And it starts filling in things for you, actually. And you put down surrogate key. And so then it starts filling this in for you for that. And you would just start putting in receives orders or customer places orders. Oh, that didn't come up. Where did that go? Oh, I'm locked up. Yay.
Oh, it's back.
Okay. Thanks. I have a 3-year-old laptop. I think I need a new one. Okay. And then just orders goes in here. So. And that's how you do that. So you just start filling that in, put in the information. The nice thing about here is the beam codes. And they're all sitting on the back of this tab. And they're nicely organized. So here are the fact codes. Here are the dimension codes. And you notice that we've got current value, historic value. Those play in slowly changing dimension pieces. So you can say, does this hold the current value, previous value, or does it hold the previous value 1 back, 2 back? Those kind of things can be tracked in here. So it's nice to have these things in here, and it adds more information on your database design that you didn't have before. And I find this is a value that's just not in any of the Kimball books anywhere. It's always written in a document somewhere else. This gets put in the model, which I find beneficial as well. You're not having that question, what was this going to be again? You've got some clear indication that there's some hierarchical information, that the column is mandatory, that it's not null, no duplicates. Grab as much information. When you ask those questions and you find out the ranges of the data in the columns, when you're doing the model stormer, you ask the questions and you go ahead and say, hey, is this mandatory? Can this be left blank? Is this nullable? Is null mean something? Does a value mean something? Can it be missed? If you have to have a source, identify that source. A source might actually be a part of the fact. It may be an actual dimension that you have to grab. But in here, you might have to identify the source as a separate column. Okay. Data types, don't go too crazy on them, and they don't go much crazy in here either. So you don't have to go and decide as decimal 8,3 or anything like that. You just want to put in relative terms. It's a character type, right? And you might put in its max. The thing about the dimensions, they're done a little bit differently. So when you ask the questions about the who, what, and where, and now you come back and you say, what are your dimensions? Let's find out some information about what you want to garner. Now we're going to ask about detail. We're going to ask, okay, you got the event. Now we've got all these dimensions. They were all defined here. Or where's the example fact? Here it is. So here's all your dimensions. You got an order date, a delivery due date, a salesperson, a sales location, a delivery address. Those are your dimensions. Now we're going to talk about each one of them and get them defined as a separate dimension. All right. And we're going to define as much as we can. We may end up just being a couple columns and maybe forever, right? Sometimes you get dimensions that go on. I wouldn't be too careful about different forms of the same columns, but about one column generally. So don't talk about the different forms of the date, like you have date with month first, date with year first, month. Don't go through those things, but do make sure the individual entities that define them, but not the format of them. Okay, so don't get caught in the format. That's always an important thing here. Don't talk about format. Talk about what are the individual columns you really have to grab. Okay. And if you can't get at it, they talk about that here. Then when you're done and you've got all this information and you've got your data, you're going to have to profile it. And they have a little bit of profiling columns available for you. So you can go ahead and if you have a sample data or if you have all the data and you have the ability to profile all the data, you can put in the word all, or you can put in 1 year or whatever it is that you're profiling. And you want to put in, if anything's missing, get the information in your max and mins. It's a nice way to do this. And if you have a couple of queries you have set, go ahead and just write a query and just run 20 of them real quick to get the answers against it. anytime you have Excel, just throw it into SQL. It's import as easy as possible, and you can run queries against it in a second, right? Don't ever be limited by that. It's no, if it do, oh, just do this. Don't ever import as Excel. If it is CSV, every single time. That I'm sorry, I didn't skip that step, but that's the most important step in any Excel file. CSV.
You could do XLS.
Oh, no. Then everything is N-bar char, and anything you do with it is just a nightmare, and it's terrible. Everything. No. No, but if you're gonna just do profiling it, who cares, right? Just get it in, look at it, and usually you're gonna get it as Excel, you're gonna get it as a CSV.
Just a question, how, this is obviously, there's a lot of, you need to know what is on the back end of this tab, so it starts populating stuff. And how long did it take you roughly to acclimate yourself to the terminology and the process?
Oh, it's not easy, still learning. Still learning, it's, I'm treating it as an agile process. I learn something every 2 weeks. And then I check in, and then I learn some more.
I mean, what you're doing here seems very similar to what you do in like an ER diagram tool, like a code.
Right,
Like,
yeah, but it's
free.
Yeah, it's free, and it's also, users can understand it. You can give this to a user. You go look in Irwin, and how's a user going to interact with that? They're not. We're going to show them this. We're going to give them this. They're going to be invested in this and say, that doesn't make sense. I just gave you a full file. I know I always have that, something wrong with the file, and I had that happen. They gave us the wrong file. So you go ahead and you get them into this. You ask them this question, does this make sense? You don't leave them out.
No, yeah.
And then the ER diagrams, you stay away from them. Don't give them one. We were almost afraid to give them this, but because they would make it. Yeah, right. And it's just not doable by them. They don't have the tools. They cost too much. It's not something they can play with. This is Excel. They're very familiar with it. They'll see it. We can publish it out somewhere. They can look at it. And you don't have to dig into the table to find out if it's a not null field or anything like that, or any of the descriptions of it.
So for any conform dimensions, you just copy them over to the next tab.
Yeah.
Spreadsheet.
Yeah. And actually, we kind of took out each one at a time. So we took out this tab and put it, it's just too much to carry it all in one. So we actually put each dimension as a separate tab in another spreadsheet. Just because you didn't do it, I do that way. Because I found it just too annoying to have too many tabs. I hate tabs. I don't know what it is, but they don't, you might miss them. So I just have one tab in one book for each dimension and for each fact. And I put them in the same project. That's it. Okay. What time is it now? 7:11. All right. And then, so this process, these codes become really helpful in defining all of these. And then I want to show one more piece. And that is, if I can find it. Where did I put it? I want to show that event store. Do the events, the event diagram. And why did that pop up to that screen? That was so nice. Let's see. Let's see if I can find. Where did I find it? Sorry, just gonna wait for something here. For some reason, I don't have a copy of it. I know I downloaded it yesterday, and I can't. That matrix, there it is. Let me download this. Come on. There it is. Okay, there's an example on there. Okay, so what this allows me to do is define the events and any, and so it goes a little more in detail, but we have some more information, and I'm gonna miss it all today because I'm almost at the end of my ability to speak. But this allows me to identify conform dimensions or interesting pieces about the dimensions as well. And I forget everything I'm supposed to say about this. But basically it provides more information and it allows me to group some of these dimensions in a way that I didn't do in Kimball's bus matrix. It allows me to get more information about the dimensions, like might be a conformed dimension that's already existing somewhere else. And so those asterisks tell me that they're not just a simple dimension. There are conformed dimensions and other dimensions within here. And then we get information about its importance, that we can rank which is more important for us to get out quicker if we do a lot more of these at one time before doing other ones. And then we get totals down here as well at how many times they occurred, which doesn't usually happen in Kimball, right? So it's kind of nice. It gives us more information, and we can have information about whether we can name it the dimension that we normally would name it, and not the conformed, like date. We'll call it order date. We'll call it all these other things, and then we'll not just put them in as one dimension once.
Where are those 4 columns on the left, just to the right of the bold ones? Sequence, dimension, what are those?
Yeah, and I'm forgetting right now, and I know them, but just, I'm sorry, I'm dead. I'm dead now for some reason. I can't think of anything. And I know the importance is something that you basically put a weighted score saying what one you want to get done first if you're going to do this. I would never do all of this first. This is always just one dimension at a time, and I mean, not one dimension, one event at a time, not that way. But once you start getting more and more events, you want to put this into this event diagram to keep track of it.
So your facts are on the rows.
Yeah, basically, right. And you get a little bit of information about, like, a purchase order has a component of deliveries and a supplier payments built into them as well. And so you get that accumulating snapshot idea in that. And what updates when this happens versus this happens versus that happens. And you get that you wouldn't capture in Kimball's at all, right?
I mean, this is almost identical to a bus matrix. It's just a couple.
Yeah, but it's adding a little bit more flavor to it to capture some things that it misses. All right. Sorry, I'm lost at this point. I'm spent. So.
Thanks.
Oh, that's great.
All right. I know it's not deep into SQL, but it's essential for SQL to work. You have a good design, right? And what better than to incorporate all the stakeholders in the process instead of just giving them a data warehouse at the end that says, go ahead, play with it in Tableau.
Have you worked on an Agile data warehouse project where you didn't use this framework?
Yes.
What do you feel like is the difference?
The difference is there's just stress. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing normally. I feel so, I hate to say it, I felt on most, and I've been a data architect for a long time, I felt in most processes, all I got was a sheet of paper, and I sat down, I designed my star, I put in my ETL process, and said, this field becomes this, it gets migrated to that, and I never talked to a user once.
So you're saying that it's more collaborative and it allows it to get it out of your head.
Yes, and I'm not the only one doing it. I feel like I'm a data architect, but I feel like my role is going to be decreased as a data architect. I'm not architecting anything. I'm just basically putting things in place is where it's supposed to go. All right. It's weird. I felt like when I was a data architect, I sat down and I architected something. This one, we're all doing it. They're all making the model. I'm not the only one. And I can concentrate on other things, which sometimes scares the heck out of me, like Tableau. But
Tableau should scare the heck out of you.
I started learning Tableau on Thursday.
I was amazed. I just learned last week that Tableau does not. Everything has to be a flat file. That's crazy to me.
Oh no, that's not the case.
You can do relational.
Yeah.
Like you can
Oh,
put a
that's
star
completely.
schema into Tableau.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
so
connected up to Snowflake. right
Yeah,
now.
Snowflake right now. Yeah, yeah.
okay, so yeah, the guy who was talking to me about it was wrong.
No, yeah, no. There's definitely joins completely. Their examples spreadsheet is just a flat spreadsheet. But
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, we're doing about 200 million rows pretty easily.
So you actually use Snowflake as the semantic layer for Tableau.
Or
Tableau
Tableau.
doesn't really have its own, does it? Semantic layer.
well, you can.
I mean, I think you can.
I mean,
You
that's-
use different data sources. You can pull in different data sources and then join
Right.
within Tableau itself. But since we define everything in Snowflake, and it just pushes down this SQL query that Tableau builds into Snowflake, execution times are like under a second.
So 200 million rows seems to be a.
I think it can go higher. I mean,
Yeah.
some.
We find it that it's really good at low number of dimensions, dimensional
Yeah,
attributes.
not going too granular.
Yeah, you can't go. You could start out very granular, but don't add out more. It doesn't like to do a lot of hierarchy stuff. It just really gets bogged down.
So if I had like 5 fact tables with 300 million rows each, and then some 20 dimensions, some of which have over 1 million rows, I would not be happy with that.
Yeah, and don't think of it as a reporting tool. It's an analysis tool. It's a tool to look at data and get trending out, not a tool to get out a Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, and it doesn't do that well. Whereas Power BI started off as kind of like a piece of Excel, right? A pivot to whatever it did. But Tableau started as a reporting tool, a graphing tool, basically. And so to add Excel and get the tabular type reports, table type reports, they just added that recently. That's something they didn't have. So making it do like what Excel does is difficult. But making it do analysis and graphing and looking at trending and things like that is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think to what you were saying, if you have like 5 fact tables, 20 dimensions, I think it's okay as long as you're not trying to pull in to graph like a visual like display all 20 dimensions and all 5 facts at the same time on the same
Right.
sheet.
Yeah, that'll crash anything.
Right.
Yeah. But I think on the layer, the computational, because like it has a pretty good performance reporting tool too that can kind of break down where it's taking the longest. But depending on what the back end is for getting the data, I think you can handle. I mean, we're expecting to handle 3 billion rows by next week, and
With Snowflake and Tableau on top of it,
Yeah.
and no intermediate layer.
right. Okay.
And then let's go here. Let's get out of here.
Is your data warehouse originally built in Snowflake, or are you bringing it into Snowflake to serve as a semantic layer?
We actually use Delta and Databricks
Yeah.
to house the main files, and we push up the Snowflake through there.
You feel like Snowflake is easier to use from that perspective compared to
Yes.
analysis services?
Yeah. I
Well,
think so.
analysis services, yeah, it has its good points too. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you can use it as a semantic layer by itself and works really well and interacts well with DAX, but I know Snowflake just is sufficient.
Yeah, and it's agnostic too.
Yeah, and it doesn't, yeah.
That's I think one of the benefits. And Databricks is technically agnostic, even though you do usually pair it with like Azure. But yeah, I think Snowflake just its no spin-up times is instant, so then you can upgrade your warehouses to handle terabytes of data within seconds very easily. And
So it's just cheaper because you can manage it.
It's very configurable. You can like bring down Python configuration scripts to kick off to, like, say you need to pump out 1 billion rows in under a minute. You can upgrade to the highest tier warehouse, pump it out, and then downgrade to the lowest tier warehouse. I mean, you pay by credit, so then you kind of just manage time at that point.
So just the other things that Beam has is hierarchical charts that you can look at and better understand what the hierarchy of view looks like. I don't like that so much, but it's there. I'd rather have, like, you know, a little box and arrows pointing in the right direction. That's nice to have it nice and clean in one area, but I don't think a lot of people are going to understand that it's a ragged versus, or a jagged versus a variable depth by looking at that. I think they'll probably look at a normal box diagram a little easier. They also have a timeline type of graph, and it basically shows you when things are happening and how we're going to capture an event. It's nice. I mean, it's what you would kind of expect on that one. That's not too big. The nice thing about their enhanced star schema is it has additional information. DD stands for degenerate dimension. Then there's the what does the FA stand for again?
Fully additive.
Yeah, fully additive. That's right. Fully additive, and there's the non-additive as well. So yeah, and partial. So and then it also, you can have information on the columns there too as well that aren't in here. Like you could throw in there where they're required and things like that as well.
So that star schema diagram, the ER diagram, that's not generated by the spreadsheet, right?
No, not at all. That one you have to make yourself. There's nothing there. Yeah, that would be too much to give away, I think, right?
I think so,
Right. And then the event diagram. And I'm sorry I didn't explain that fully, but if you wanted to go look at that book, I highly recommend that book. It's a relatively easy read, although it's kind of got some funkiness on how to read it. But
What's the book again?
it is Agile Data Warehouse Design by Corr, C-O-R-R. Lawrence.
I'm glad you brought this up. I read that book years ago and I was like, why would I ever use this?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I'm surprised how well it's working, right? I really am. I mean, the users have been really receptive to it, or to the stakeholders. I shouldn't call them users.
Yeah,
It sounds like they're doing drugs or something.
Before Tom joined the current project, we did a data set that took 6 months, where they were basically handed requirements, and we didn't actually implement this Beam methodology.
Yeah.
And it took us probably 4 months to go to UAT, and some of that was building out the core framework for cloud-based ETL. But with these new data sets, we're 3 weeks in.
Yeah, we're 3 sprints in, and we're going to UAT.
UAT,
Yeah. And I'm not kidding. This has been the fastest I've ever seen the data mart be developed. And it's really in good condition. I got to tell you that. I mean, the data looks good. We've gotten faster feedback than I've ever had before. We've sent them spreadsheets, and this is what we see. Is this right? Can you fix it? We didn't know it, but 1 hour later, she came back with, "Oh, I looked at this already, and this is the answer." I'm like, that's just unheard of. Because they wouldn't know who I was if I sent that any other time. They knew who I was. They had a face to me.
I'm still really curious. We talked about this a little bit at the beginning about, and it sounds like you didn't run into this with this client, but actually running data quality as an iterative process.
Yeah.
Is like something that I have a hard time.
I know, because and I hate this too, because I've always heard you give them bad results, they don't want to use it again. But if you give them the expectation that they're involved in it, and there's not just given something out of the blue, I think that changes the whole scenario. Right.
There's a book, I don't know if you've done like other Agile, BA, like
No, yeah,
implementations or anything, but there's a book called User Story Mapping, which is actually very similar to this, where it talks about verbs and nouns.
right,
And you actually, like, they basically say, buy a big brick of Post-its. And as you're talking through business requirements, you're writing down verbs and nouns on Post-its, and you're basically doing a matrix
Right.
like that. And then and then you can basically visualize your requirements, like what's important, what do you want to focus on, what did you said this word 13 times.
Right.
So this is really cool.
Yeah.
It's basically taking that, which is a more generic approach to gathering requirements, and throwing it into the data model,
Right.
which is pretty awesome.
yeah. And this has been around surprisingly for a long time. Like you said, you've had it for a while. This book has been around
Oh, yeah,
for
at
a
least
while.
3 years.
Yeah. And I was blown away at how well it worked. 'Cause I started reading and going, oh, you're throwing requirements on top of that, all this other crap on top of that. I thought Agile says you're supposed to not, but boy, when we started doing it, the users just engaged. I'd never had it before. And maybe because I've been always so removed in every project. You just give the result, you're given the analysis, you're given a piece of paper, do this, put it out there. And you don't feel like you're really involved in the company, you're just involved with the data, right? I actually felt part of the company for the first time.
I don't know that Agile is completely the reason you didn't get that in the past. Like you can
No,
still talk to
no,
people
no,
about Agile.
no, it's kind of the consultant,
Oh, it's being a
That has a
consultant.
lot.
yeah, it's, you're just usually set off somewhere in a free
Yeah,
desk
well,
somewhere,
That's for sure.
yeah. But when I was as a regular employee, it's just the paralysis that you go through as a regular employee that is tough. Nothing gets done quickly. I think this will help as a regular employee, this will help if you can get this implemented at your actual physical company that you're working for, instead of as a consultant. If you can get them involved and show that it works, I think it'd be awesome.
Pick a winner.
No.
I'll
pick
take,
a
I'll
winner.
take pictures of these.
Okay, no, that's good. Oh, I should have taken the first one. Keith.
Tree strategy folder.
Yeah, I've done that.
Did you get that last week too? Or last month?
No, I
Oh,
haven't
I thought it
done
was you.
anything in a while.
so I'm done with my talk. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah. So that's my submission for SQL Saturday.
So are you doing an in-person video
No, no.
audition, basically?
Yeah, right now, yeah. Would you accept it?
Let's see what the survey
Right.
results.
Oh, darn you.
Yeah, I've never seen this many.
Bad ones? I've never seen this many bad. You can't just end your sentence like that.
Amazon. What? Amazon gift card?
Oh,